TikTokers have caught on to the fact that the stock portfolios of members of Congress tend to outperform the stock market. So they're tracking the financial disclosures of these lawmakers and investing in the same stocks that our corrupt lawmakers are invested in. Seems pretty smart. Now, here is one example of a TikToker saying that he's doing just that.
Shouts out to Nancy Pelosi, the stock market's biggest whale. Apparently she's decided to go very heavy in tech stocks, so I'm gonna show you guys which ones she bought. According to her financial disclosure form, she bought Google, Amazon, Apple, and Nvidia. This can be considered very good for all of these stocks, and she's invested over $11 million in all of these positions put together. Shouts out to Nancy Pelosi for the stock tips.
Yeah, shouts out to Nancy Pelosi, who has access to insider information and can make some trades on that. Now, of course, she claims, no, I have nothing to do with this. I'm not investing in anything. There's no insider trading happening. We'll get back to that in just a second. Now, the TikToker that we just showed you seems to be unaware of how things work. Unaware of the fact that there's some corruption taking place here, which is why these lawmakers are doing so well in their stock portfolios. But there are some other TikTokers who are aware of the corruption, and his thought is, well, if I can't beat them, why not join them? Let's watch.
And would you look at that, literally clockwork. The US government has an agreement to purchase a supercomputer from who else? Nvidia. Yep, Nvidia, the one that Nancy bought back on 7/23/21. In that tweet, the news comes out literally yesterday, like 8/24/21. She knew.
All right, so that TikToker with the fun music in the background was Chris Josephs, who keeps close track of the investments made by these lawmakers. And of course, we know about the investments they make, about the stocks that they sell, the stocks that they buy, thanks to their financial disclosures. And that's what Josephs is looking at. Now, in the past year and a half, Josephs has been taking advantage of a law called the Stock Act, which requires lawmakers to disclose stock trades and those of their spouses within 45 days. He's personally investing when he sees which stocks are picked. By the way, let me just pause for a second. I'm not doing this segment to give you guys financial advice. In fact, this is not a financial advice show. Do not take any financial advice from anyone who's not a certified financial advisor, a fiduciary specifically. I'm doing this story because the fact that members of Congress can invest in individual stocks and the fact that members of Congress have control over legislation that impacts these businesses is wrong and should be banned and outlawed. Okay, let me continue. Joseph says this, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with it. I'm at the point where if you can't beat them, meaning members of Congress, join them. I typically do buy. The next one she does, I'm going to buy. So that's what he's doing. That's his whole strategy. In fact, he offers a service that gives you notifications on your phone as soon as a member of Congress has made a financial disclosure. So far this year, by the way, this is relevant, Senate and House members have filed more than 4,000 financial trading disclosures, get this, with at least 315 million of stocks and bonds bought or sold. So I, for the longest time, wondered, why does anyone want to serve in Congress if they don't use that position of power for good, right? Like, what's the point of having power for power's sake, right? Imagine all the incredible things you could do to improve people's lives. Instead, they spend all their time fundraising, they spend all their time kissing up to corporate interests. And so I was like, I don't know, it seems like a miserable existence. Why do they do it? Well, there's a giant perk if you're a member of Congress. Again, you have access to insider information and you get to trade on that insider information, which is why if you look at data, if you look at studies into this, members of Congress have stock portfolios that outperform the stock market. Now, an assistant professor at Augusta University who's been studying the trend told NPR this: investors perceive that senators may have insider information, and we see abnormal positive returns when there's a disclosure by a senator. And by the way, at least one financial services consultant is planning to set up a financial instrument that automatically tracks congressional stock picks because, in his view, lawmakers are, quote, probably privy to more information than just the general public. And guess what? They are. Let's watch.
In March 2020, news spread that 4 US senators, including Burr, were being investigated for insider trading.
Ahead of the drastic escalations in this pandemic, while still reassuring citizens that the US was prepared.
Senator Burr vehemently denies the allegations against him, but here's what we know. On January 24th, the Senate's Health Committee held a briefing with CDC Director Robert Redfield and White House Pandemic Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci, according to the Washington Post. About 2 weeks later, Burr and Tennessee Senator Lamar Alexander wrote a Fox News editorial that the US was better prepared than ever to deal with a pandemic like the coronavirus. Less than a week later, the Dow set an all-time record, hitting just over 29,551 points. On February 13th, Burr sold between $630,000 and $1.7 million worth of investments. He did it in 33 separate transactions, and he didn't buy a single share.
I mean, that was just Senator Burr, but this is a long-standing practice. This is a huge problem because, again, it's not just about Congress people enriching themselves, which is pretty gross as it is. If they're legislating and making decisions on regulations, for instance, are they really going to want to pass legislation that regulates businesses that then leads to losses in profits, hurts the money that they earn, right? Earn through these through the stock market. I mean, it obviously is a huge conflict of interest, huge conflict of interest. They should not be invested in individual stocks. In fact, Nancy Pelosi claims she's not invested in individual stocks, which is a flat out lie. She's like, I don't manage my stock portfolio, someone else does. Come on, really? Oh, so you have a financial advisor or a money manager who does it for you and you're completely in the dark about what kind of investments are being made? You think we're gonna believe that garbage? Come on. It's pathetic. And by the way, her husband is invested in individual stocks. And her office mentioned that it's someone else handles her stock portfolio and her husband deals with it too. Yeah, that's her husband. They live together in the same household. They have the same interests. It's just so stupid. Anyway, there are some members of Congress who are trying to fight back against this, although there's a lot of pushback. For instance, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, a Democrat from Illinois, is part of a bipartisan group of House and Senate members who have introduced legislation banning lawmakers from owning individual stocks. Unsurprisingly, he has run up against a lot of opposition to the idea. And I want to just briefly mention one of the studies that kind of track the stock portfolios of members of Congress compared to the overall stock market. And here's what they found. The study, Abnormal Returns from the Common Stock Investments of Members of the United States House of Representatives, found that House members earned statistically significant positive abnormal returns, outperforming the market by 6 percentage points. Senators, by the way, do even better. The authors say, citing their own earlier research from 2004, Senate portfolios show some of the highest excess returns ever recorded over a long period of time, significantly outperforming even hedge fund managers with gains that are both economically large and statistically significant. And just quickly going back to the financial disclosures, there's been a trend lately of lawmakers failing to, do the financial disclosures that they're supposed to do. And then they have all sorts of excuses for why that's the case. My question is, are there ever gonna be any consequences for that? And are we ever gonna get an independent body outside of the House or Senate Ethics Committee to investigate the insider trading that's happening right now? The thing is, you need members of Congress to pass legislation to make that happen. That's really hard to do when the same members of Congress are enriching themselves with this type of behavior.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.